Unfortunately, the recent Ben 10 live-action movie that's been planned for some time has now officially been cancelled, which, I mean, who's surprised, it's WB. This, however, is not the end of Ben 10, since there is apparently a comic series soon on the way. I've been really excited for a reboot for a while, and now that it's finally happening, I started thinking about some older episodes that I thought had good ideas but were executed very poorly. So in this video, I'm going to go over a bunch of episodes that I thought kinda sucked, but had a lot of potential. So think of this as my reboot wish list. And just to be clear, I don't want these episodes to be just rewritten, I want them to be better fleshed out. So in other words, maybe switch to a two-parter or a full season arc. Another thing is that I'm not claiming that all these episodes are, like, awful or anything. I do still like them to some extent, I just think their execution could have been a lot better. So without further ado, let's start with number 1, Vengeance of Vilgax.
Actually, Vengeance of Vilgax is already a two-parter.
Shut up, you prepubescent animal! Vengeance of Vilgax is the premiere episode to everyone's favorite season of Ben 10, and also introduced my most nostalgic Vilgax, voiced by James Remar. Putting aside the side plots about Kevin's mutation and the aliens escaping the Omnitrix, the main conflict of this episode kind of falls flat. Thanks to a system called the Conqueror's Challenge, Vilgax has conquered 10 planets and stolen the powers of each planet's most powerful hero, making him more powerful than ever and a perfect match for Ben. Except for the fact that A, he's defeated like a piss baby anyway, B, the 10 planets he conquered and the Conqueror's Challenge are never brought up again, and C, his 10 new powers end up just being egregious pop culture references. The season as a whole is kinda messy and just all over the place. Vilgax successfully takes the Omnitrix, his entire goal and reason for existing, only to then almost immediately anticlimactically lose it. Twice! So here is my proposed rewrite. Vilgax returns to Earth with the hopes of conquering it, but is very easily defeated by Ben and his team. This isn't meant to show that Vilgax is now weaker or a bitch baby or anything, it's meant to show that Ben has grown more powerful since the classic series, and he's also gotten more arrogant since the defeat of the Hybrid. And so, enraged by his defeat, Vilgax vows vengeance, on Ben, and so he embarks on a journey to conquer as many planets as he can, defeating all these different heroes and sucking them off. Meanwhile, the gang can track him down, and each episode is a new planet and a new power. And then in the finale, you can have Vilgax actually beat Ben, and technically since Ben has no powers, that's when you give him the Omnitrix. And then for a whole episode, have Vilgax conquer the Earth. You could even give Vilgax a whole legion of henchmen from each planet he's conquered. Now, aside from the fact that this is a very serialized story, and there was a lot of network meddling during Season 3 and they would absolutely never let this happen, the biggest issue with this plotline is that, well, guy traveling around the universe stealing powers and artifacts, that's literally just Agrigor's quest. Like, that's just straight up Agrigor's quest. Both even have a subplot about Kevin mutating. What are the odds of that? Moving on now to number 2, The Secret of Chromastone. In the aforementioned Vengeance of Vilgax episode, Chromastone is destroyed and shattered, only to then reform as one of Ben's classic aliens, Diamond Head, in his ugliest design yet. The idea that Ben's two crystal-themed aliens were somehow connected would later be expanded upon in the episode The Secret of Chromastone. It's revealed that the Crystal Sapiens, Chromastone species, aren't actually a full species. There's only one of them, an asexual space Jesus named Sugalite.
Actually, if it's not a species, then how did it get inside the Omnitrix?
Well, Shit, that's actually a good point. What the hell? Tetrax Shard, Ben's first alien ally, had actually made a deal with Vilgax years ago, and he basically tricked him and then destroyed his homeworld Petropia. And this Sugalite dude, I can't remember if he was, like, created or if he was just existed, I don't know, but his whole purpose, his power, is to restore the entire population of Petropia if it's ever destroyed. Except the funny part is, he doesn't do that, like, at all. Instead, Vilgax just, like, kills him and That's that. Instead, Ben ends up doing it. And while you might be thinking, oh, well, is Ben gonna turn into Chromastone? He's technically also a Crystal Sapien. He should have the same powers, right? Well, no, he doesn't. He turns into Diamond Head and does it as Diamond Head. So if a Petrosapien could do it, why didn't Tetrax just do it before? I don't really like it whenever characters are resurrected, and once Petropia is revived, it's literally never brought up again. But resurrecting the Petrosapiens I kinda don't really care about because they're all a bunch of nameless nobodies. But Sugalite is like an established character with this crazy-ass, convoluted-ass backstory who gets killed off and resurrected in one episode just to never show up again. Like, the guy is about as one-off as one-offs get, so why didn't he just stay dead? But I think this episode has a lot of really interesting concepts, and the fact that it was all crammed into just 20 minutes is, well, one of the reasons it ultimately fails. Making it a two-parter can give us more time for backstory, so we don't have to dwell on all the lore and exposition. I'm not the hugest fan of resurrecting the Petrosapiens, so we could give Sugalite a different purpose, but it doesn't really have to change, it's whatever. Maybe just try to portray the resurrection of them as like a more triumphant moment, because it is presented kind of mundane in the episode. I really like the idea of one of Ben's aliens not being a species, but instead an individual entity, but I think in the rewrite it should be better explained how Sugalite even got in the Omnitrix in the first place. It's like a subversion of the Ghost Freak arc, where the alien that escapes the Omnitrix and comes to life isn't actually a bad guy, kinda like in Save the Last Dance. Hey, Ben created a bunch of alien offspring in that episode also, what are the odds of that? Oh, and just one more thing. Ben never transforms into Chromastone in this episode, titled The Secret of Chromastone. Number 3. Victor the Spoils. Speaking of the scare, dude had this whole trio of Halloween-themed henchmen. One of them, Dr. Victor, was so freaking cool it was practically guaranteed he'd one day get his own solo episode. And in Ultimate Alien, he finally got one, where he was stuck in a coma the whole time. They introduced one of those stock, fake European countries, and it's in the middle of a civil war because it's a stock, fake European country. So the prince, I forgot his name, wants to use Dr. Victor to level the playing field of the war. So the king, I forgot his name, is enraged by this, and so he calls in Ben to fix everything. Legally, Ben's team can't, end the war or anything, they're just there to handle Dr. Victor. But the king betrays them because he's old, and then this part's really fucking stupid, he uses the Ultimatrix on Ben and turns him into Amphibian, and then uses Amphibian's electricity to power this mind-swapping device so he can put his brain in Dr. Victor's body. And then they fight for a bit, and then Ben frees the zombies of their mind control. Oh yeah, there were zombies also. And then they piss off, and that's it. Now, I know that introducing a country isn't quite as large scale as, say, a giant alien planet, but it still feels really underdeveloped. Now, I'm not saying we need a whole-ass history lesson on the geopolitical state of Vlavnia. It just would have been nice to know why the rebels were fighting, and what exactly the royal family's relationship with the rest of the country is, because we're just kind of told everything, we don't see any of it. The whole episode takes place in this cramped, crusty, rusty old dungeon. There is something just so low budget about UAF, and not really in the good way. UAF has always been criticized for its bland background, and that's because, well, they are bland. They're almost as bland as an XOP-902 sausage made with my genetic template. I really like the idea of humans using stolen alien technology for their own personal gain. It should be a story about humans messing with forces they don't understand, and even though the bad guys do get their comeuppance, it never quite backfires in their face the way you want it to. Imagine if Dr. Victor were an actual character and not just a prop. What if he got back his memories and then vowed to conquer this new country as vengeance for experimenting on him? When Victor isn't serving Zeskar or fighting the Vladats, what exactly does he want? That was a question this episode could have addressed as a two-parter, but ultimately didn't. At least its design was pretty cool, though. Number 2, Busybox. Now, I really don't like Busybox. Like, genuinely, this might have to be one of my personal least favorite episodes in all the Ben 10 franchise. The episode follows the trio as they battle an alien android that keeps shapeshifting and mimicking their powers. I understand the appeal of the episode where the robot keeps changing and adapting and the trio need to think of new ways to combat it. The episode ends up just devolving into a really long fight scene. Even though I think chicken fight episodes can be done well, I always hate it whenever Ben 10 specifically just has an entire episode be nothing but one big fight scene. I think it's just really unengaging. The Riddles also show up, and even though I do think the Riddles are pretty funny, they're really oversaturated, especially in this season of Alien Force. They do blow up and die at the end, so I mean, there's that. You might be thinking, oh well, how do they defeat this evil robot? Do they find its weak spot? Do they trick it into destroying itself? Do they find some way to prevent it from mimicking anything else so it can't evolve? Well, no, none of that. An energy woman from another dimension called Analgian shows up and just takes it and leaves.
Actually, she's called the Cosmic Mom, not the Nalgian.
How did you get out the basement? That's it. Where's my wiffle bat?
No, please, not the wiffle bat. Anything but the wiffle bat.
This ending always felt like such a cop-out. What's the point of having all that fighting and build-up if it just ends where some rando we've never seen before ex machinas their way in and fixes everything? Some fans will argue, oh, the whole point of this episode is how mysterious it is and how there's all these unanswered questions. I don't care. No, it's not. This is Ben 10, not a Lovecraft poem. I want some goddamn answers. But I think the cosmic horror angle could have worked. So my version of this episode ends where, Ben, Kevin, Gwen, they successfully destroy the machine using one of the previous methods I listed. They're in the desert, the classic AF desert. There's a big crater in the sand and they're all like injured and beaten and they limp away barely alive. And that's when the cosmic mom is revealed, in this version probably with her daughter. And then we find out that the item was really a toy the whole time. And we don't get a scene of the mom just like sitting there and explaining to the trio that it's a toy and how they're from another dimension and everything. We just kind of let the audience figure that out on their own. That way it feels much more implied, which makes it much more scary. And the box almost killed them. They barely survive it. It's stronger than Vilgax, and it even successfully killed the Riddles. So if you imagine that they never find out that the thing was really just a children's toy the whole time, it's kind of funny in a dark, twisted sort of way. But here's the thing. I lied to you. Busy Box is not the episode in the slot. I do not think it should be a two-parter, nor do I think it should be a full story arc. I think it's very comfortable as a simple one-off. Whenever the space MILF showed up, she started, spouting off about the rules of interdimensional travel, and to me, I saw that as, the writers maybe trying to, set up a future storyline. At the time, I hadn't seen Omniverse yet, but I knew in the back of my head that there was a lot of multiverse stuff in that, so I thought maybe they would have revisited this concept in that show. A lot of fans really like the Nalgian. They make fan art of Ben as a Nalgian. They power scale the Nalgian. They talk about the lore of the Nalgian. I was starting to get the Nalgian hype. And you know where it all went? Nowhere! Because the Nalgian never came back! I later found out that even when the episode was first made, the writers were very open about how they never planned on bringing back the Nalgian. Then why did you cock-tease us with it so much? In conclusion, I hope I never say or hear the word Nalgian ever again. Hey, they had a second cosmic mom. What are the odds of that? Before we get to our number one, my name is Bradworst, and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you're curious as to what I look like in real life, click the link in the description and enter your credit card information along with the expiration month and year. And now on with the honorable mentions. Hi, I'm Ratworst. I'm a rat. I make all the stop motions, and I'm gonna do the honorable mentions. Ask any Ben 10 fan and they'll tell you that Eon was a wasted character. I'd like to see a storyline where he's the big bad and not just there to play second fiddle to Vilgax or Maltruant. Magic was used in a number of episodes and storylines, but there's never been a true honest-to-God full season dedicated to just magic. Sure, there was the Dagon arc, which was kind of about magic, but magic is almost always relegated to just Earth in Ben 10. It'd be so cool to see how different alien cultures interpret the same magic. A two-parter about Kyber the Huntsman hunting down and killing the Ultimates. It can even be subtitled The Ultimate Hunt. Remember how Mad Ben got 2 whole episodes all to himself? Give some of the other evil Bens the same love. And finally, Kevin's dad. If you know, you know. And that's all I have for you today. I've been Ratwurst, and this has been Honorable Mentions. And always remember to take mental health days. Back to you, Bradwurst. Thank you, Ratwurst, for those wonderful honorable mentions. That guy's a piece of fucking shit. I hope he falls off a cliff or something. And number 1, TGIS. A lot of fans don't really love TGIS, and that's for admittedly valid reasons. Zach's portrayal was completely fudged. He never really got a big, triumphant hero moment. His arch-nemesis Argos, who he's been fighting for years, is anticlimactically defeated by Ben. But I still really like this crossover, I guess just because it gives payoff to years of Easter eggs and references, and it got me reinterested in the Secret Saturdays, which in recent years has become one of my all-time favorite shows because of its style. We gotta bring back that 60s scientist adventure family trope. It was so fucking cool. But my issue with this crossover is that it just ultimately amounts to nothing, really. I think legally the writers, could have continued to explore the cryptid lore past this episode, but it's understandable why they didn't. They don't have to take all that lore into account or anything like that. This episode should have ended with the universes of Ben 10 and the Secret Saturdays feeling completely solidified as one in the same, and I think I figured out the perfect way to do that. And no, not with a two-parter, not with a story arc, with something completely different. So picture this, maybe in an alternate version of TGIS, or a possible sequel episode to TGIS, a specific cryptid were to appear. It doesn't really matter which cryptid it was, as long as it appeared in the original Saturday's show. It could have been in the background, it could have been important, it could have been something that didn't actually exist, but does exist in this weird what-if scenario we're doing right now. The creature's ancestors would be alien in origin, and even though yes, it was born on Earth, and it is classified as a cryptid, it is technically biologically an alien. We could even subtly hint at this by showing Zach's struggle to control the creature, since I think it's said that cryptids actually have a genetic difference that makes them cryptids, even though some are just regular animals like Komodo. Now the whole idea I'm trying to get at here is that this would allow a loophole so that Ben can transform into an alien, have one, just one, no more, but one transformation that's not an alien. See, I want to break the rules without breaking the rules. I think it would be so unique if Ben had just one transformation that wasn't an alien, and a cryptid from the Secret Saturdays would be the perfect way to do that. It would give the Saturdays a permanent mark on the Ben 10 universe. Just imagine if all throughout Omniverse, Ben could mistransform, save people, take down bad guys, solve puzzles, do all this as an alien that isn't really an alien, something unique to the playlist, and one that reminds us of a really great TV show from the 2000s. That would make this kind of meh crossover something truly special. Well, aside from the fact that adding one not-alien would open the possibility of adding other not-aliens, which then lead to the entire fandom being divided and all sorts of chaos and panic and riots and destruction in the streets, but who gives a shit? But what do you guys think? Do you think it would be worth sacrificing one of the main rules of Ben 10 to give the Secret Saturdays a proper place in this universe, or what? And what other episodes of Ben 10 do you think should have been two-parters and or full story arcs? And are you excited for the new Ben 10 comic? What are some things you hope to see when it releases? I would hate to hear your opinions, so definitely don't put your thoughts in the comment section down below. But until then, this has been Bradwurst, signing off. This came out how many years ago? The finale came out how many years ago?